Hello everyone, welcome to this short introduction video for the Coach Assistant Support Programme. My name is Matthew Wood, and the overall aim of this project is to facilitate you to put into practice the coaching skills and content from the Coach Assistant qualification and to help you be more confident and effective as an assistant coach with the potential to progress towards becoming a lead coach and further qualifications. To be an effective coach, it is important that we understand who we are working with, the individual performer, and how we can support them to acquire skills, develop and progress as athletes and young people. In other words, we need an understanding of the learning process. This is where theory can support us to pull on our experience and to use it to underpin planning and in-session decision-making. A constraints-based approach is a theoretical framework that has been applied to many aspects of human behaviour, including sports performance. Constraints-led coaching is a specific method of coaching whereby the coach deliberately manipulates task constraints to create and support athlete exploration and discovery in a task. This approach to coaching is based upon the idea that an individual's behaviour or performance follows a close relationship with their environment. That is why constraints-led coaching is sometimes referred to as an environmental or ecological approach. Constraints-led coaching is represented by the triangle you see before you. This shows the three categories of constraints, defined as the performer or individual athlete, the environment, and the task constraints. More on these next. Constraints are boundaries that shape individual behaviour. For example, your current posture is being shaped by the surface supporting you, be it a chair or standing, plus your own individual muscles and joints, be them strong, flexible, or maybe weak or fatigued. And the overall environment that you are situated in, maybe a noisy coffee shop, so you are leaning in to listen and pay attention. The key idea is that constraints limit or shape behaviour, they do not cause it. An important part of constraints-led coaching is the idea that the three categories are not isolated from one another, but are in fact interacting with each other at all times. This is very relevant to coaching athletics, as a key challenge as a coach is navigating and making decisions as things change within our sessions, and over a series of sessions as the athlete develops and changes. This idea is just one example of how we will use the theory of constraints to explore our coaching in more depth during the programme. Previously, I introduced the idea that constraints theory can help us explain and understand individual performance. In the context of athletics, we recognise that the performance we observe emerges guided and shaped by the interacting constraints specific to that individual, task and environment. This is an important idea we will explore further in some detail using your own examples during the workshops. Next, let's look in more detail at the different categories of constraints. Perhaps the easiest category of constraints to think about are the environmental constraints. These are all around us when we perform any task. In an athletics context, these could include the facility we train in, the surface we perform on, the lighting, the weather. Also, this category includes aspects of the social environment, i.e., is the environment a club or an academy? What's the culture of this environment? Is it developmental or performance orientated? Generally, we consider this category of constraints as fixed and beyond the immediate reach of the coach. However, they can change, but potentially take a significant amount of energy and time to do so. Environmental constraints are only important to the extent that they exclude or restrict possible behaviours or performance solutions. Next, we will consider the category of constraints that characterise the individual performers we work with. These are features of the individual athletes such as height and weight, or their ability to coordinate movement, how strong they are, what their speed or endurance abilities are like. This category also includes the individual's motivation, or specifically their intentions when performing a task. These are just some examples. I am sure you can identify some relevant performer constraints that are specific to your coaching context. To make changes to performer constraints, we need time. For example, to improve someone's strength, you perhaps need a minimum of 8 weeks to experience a significant difference. This is an important element to consider as a coach. You may want to think about these constraints as being developmental, which in itself can help shape how you choose to coach and influences you in this category. Task constraints are highly specific to the practice being coached. They include all aspects associated with running, jumping and throwing activities. This could be the rules of the event, i.e. the rules of race walking shape the technical movements athletes are permitted to perform. Also the dimension and specifications of the performance area, such as a long jump approach or the equipment being used, such as the weight of a javelin. We can also identify timings and distances of activities and the intentions or intensities placed on a task. For example, is it a flat-out sprint or a measured endurance run? This is the most important category of constraints for a coach, as these are time independent, meaning they can be changed or manipulated in real time. Again, these are just some examples of task constraints. During the subsequent workshops, there will be several opportunities to identify, explore and discover ways that you can manipulate and design key task constraints in your coaching. Next, we will look at an example of a constraints-led approach used with a developing hurdler. So here is the now familiar constraints-led triangle. Next, we will look at different categories of constraint acting in our hurdles example. The first category of constraints we will consider are the features of the environment that shape the hurdler's performance. These include the arena lighting, track surface, the fact it's an academy environment with a performance context. The performer constraints include the athlete's age, experience level, their ability, speed, strength, coordination, as just some examples. We could also drill down further to include aspects of the socio-cultural or individual's motivations, which we will do so in the workshops that you attend. Before we consider the task constraints, it is important for coaches not to skip straight to this category, despite it being very tempting. Having an appreciation and awareness for the environment around us and the individual athletes we work with is critical for the sustainability of our success as coaches and therefore the sustainability of athletes' development. The key task constraints in this example include hurdle height and distance apart, the intention or aim to run a 3-step rhythm fast, and the hula hoops placed to emphasize the landing of the lead leg. The aim of a constraints-led approach is to deliberately design and manipulate task constraints to create opportunities for athletes to explore, discover, and adapt to a task. Let's look at that in more detail. In our hurdling example, the task constraints we have identified are highly specific to this individual performer and their environment. Remember that the three categories, indeed all constraints, are interacting, resulting in the emergence of the individual performance or solution to the task that we observe. The key here is that the task constraints do not prescribe a solution for the athlete. Our coaching goal is to support the athlete to explore all the possible ways they could solve this task, i.e. run with a 3-step rhythm, landing with your lead leg in the hula hoop. The coaching decisions of hurdle height and distance apart are relevant to the individual performer's athletic constraints, i.e. how fast and coordinated are they? It is possible to make changes to the task in real time. For example, the coach could manipulate the distance between the hurdles. This may be used to encourage the athlete to explore further and discover additional possibilities to hurdle fast with a 3-step rhythm. This is just one example where the coach goes to the task to make a coaching intervention with the aim of supporting or promoting the athlete to explore and adapt in their own individual way. So in summary, in a constraints-led approach to coaching, the key coaching tool is the manipulation and design of task constraints. Skilled behaviour is understood to emerge from the interaction between the performer, environment and task constraints. Athletes are encouraged and supported to explore, discover and adapt within a task, coming up with their own uniquely individual solution. Finally, in constraints-based coaching, the role of the coach shifts to one of a designer of practice tasks. We can therefore summarise this as going to the task for a solution. What next? During the Coach Assistant Support Programme, we will work together to explore session design using the constraints-led theory, discover how to implement a constraints-led approach. There will be several opportunities to collaborate with other coaches, and overall we aim to shape your coaching going forward. Thank you for listening. I look forward to meeting you all online very soon and working with you.